chapter 17, it tells us, I'm just jumping down through the passage here. Verse 17, chapter 17, verse 17. Jesse said unto David, his son, take now for thy brethren an ephah of parched corn, those 10 loaves, run to the camp to thy brethren. So it was David's job. He's too young to fight. We saw even in verse 15, David had been with Saul, and that's so interesting based on what happens in chapter 18, even the end of chapter 17, because Saul acts like he has no idea who he is. The young kid who just goes out and slays the giant that Saul himself is too scared to fight has no idea who David is. He asks people, who is this kid? He asks his second in command, who is this? And that guy says, I don't know. He's the kid that's been playing the harp in your court. But he missed that. And anyway, how often is the person that we need to know, meet, maybe the person that's going to meet the greatest need in our life is the one that's right there, but we're ignoring because we don't think they're important. Saul was already wrapped up in his pride and his arrogance, right? Saul was already arrogant at this point in his life. Saul was already in that haughty spirit. God had already chosen David to follow him later on. And so Saul was overcome by pride, and the warrior that he needed to kill the giant, Goliath, was already in his court. And he sent him home because he's just a little kid. And then he's looking around trying to find someone to fight the giant. Well, he was there. He came back. So he sent David home, verse 15. His dad, Jesse, says, take this food down to your brothers. Verse 20, David rose up. What's the next word? Early. Young boy, right? Too young to be in the battle. Too young to fight. This day, he didn't have to watch the sheep. David got up. He didn't sleep in. I think that's a great lesson for teenagers, young adults, preteens, junior high, junior church kids. There was a job to do, responsibility to do. He didn't sleep in. He didn't roll over. He didn't hit snooze 42 times on the clock, right? He got up early because there was a job to do. What's the next thing he did in the same verse? He left the sheep with a keeper. Isn't that interesting? I think we see the value David put on his daily job of taking care of the sheep. It's not an accident that God chose David to be king over the lost sheep of Israel, because David took great concern over the few sheep he had out in the wilderness. And when his dad said, hey, tomorrow I have a job for you to do, I want you to take this food to your brothers, David got up early, and the first thing he did was he went and found someone else and say, hey, you, one of the servants, a cousin, we have no idea who, but somebody nearby. David goes and gets him and says, hey, you need to watch my sheep. I have to do something today. You watch him. He didn't shirk his responsibility, right? He didn't throw it off. He didn't ignore it. He didn't think it was nothing. That's important because his brother thinks they're nothing, right? We're going to get to that. His brother thinks those sheep are nothing. But David thinks they're important. And David finds somebody to watch the sheep. Then, we're still in verse 20. He took and went as Jesse commanded him. He came to the trench as the host was going forth to fight and shouted for the battle. Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. Verse 22, I think we see a similar characteristic. David now left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage. Whose carriage was it? Well, his dad's, right? Dad's. Dad gave him the assignment. You're going to take the carriage. We're going to put some food in it. Take it down to your brothers. Check on how they're doing. See what's going on. David gets up early, finds someone to watch the sheep, takes his dad's carriage, goes down to the battle, and listen, finds someone to look after his dad's carriage. I raised 2 boys. I have 2 grandkids. It's time to go home. Friday night. Go get your shoes. I don't know where they are. No idea. I'm like, you just took them off. Where did you put them? My wife has a place. Pink has a place for them to go. They're not there. Where did you put your shoes? I don't know. Before you leave, where's the remote for the TV? I don't know. I don't know where anything is. Don't forget your lunchbox that you brought home from school. I don't know where it is. I don't know where anything is. I'm just saying, we get used to that. You know, we're trying to teach responsibility and teach those type of things. David seemed to get it, right? There's a battle to fight, to go check on. David finds first someone to watch his sheep. He takes his dad's carriage. There's responsibility in that. He goes down to the battle, and he leaves his dad's carriage with someone to look after it. David didn't have to come back after the battle, and please understand, David's life changed after the battle. But David wasn't going to come back after the battle and go, where did I put that thing, you know? Where'd those oxen go? Where's that carriage at? I have no idea where I left it. Because things got crazy after the battle, right? Didn't the Israelites pursue the Philistines? I mean, things got a little crazy, but David had found someone to look after it and to take care of it and to watch it. How about verse 28? This is not my lesson tonight. I was just excited about it. Verse 28, this was the kids' lesson this morning. Verse 28, Eliab, that's his brother, his eldest brother. Verse 28, Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men, because David's asking what's going on. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, why camest thou down hither? Listen, and with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? Isn't that an interesting question? It's interesting for you and me because we know the answer to that. The oldest brother said, what are you doing here? And who's watching them sheep you're supposed to be watching? Well, ironically, the Bible told us in verse 20, he did indeed leave the sheep with someone. There was a name. Oh, we don't know who it was, but he left it with somebody. Isn't that great? With whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart. Thou art come down to see that thou mightest see the battle. And that's where David said in verse 29, what have I now done? Is there not a cause? God didn't choose David by accident. David, as a young person, had character and responsibility. God was choosing David to be the next king of Israel because David knew how to manage a few sheep in the wilderness. That wasn't an accident. I think that's such an important lesson for children. It's an important lesson for you and me. What's God going to do in the lives of these children? We had 6 young people, 2 adults and 6 young people get baptized today. What's God going to do in their lives? I don't know. I think there's a point where kids start to, look at the big world and say, I don't know who I am. You know what? God's looking for people that'll take care of the responsibility in the job that they have right now. God knew that David was extremely responsible with those few sheep in the wilderness. It'll go on to tell us that he killed a lion, killed a bear. He did a number of things to protect his sheep. And when God was looking for someone, he didn't look as even Samuel looked. The big, the tall, the broad shoulders, right? Samuel kept going through Jesse's sons. Got to be this one, got to be this one, must be that one. He turns to Jesse, don't you have any more? And even David's dad said, well, there's David. He's out there watching the sheep. Samuel said, that's the one. That's the one God chose.